radicalization takes different forms. It depends what the circumstances are. It varies from geographical region to geographical region. It varies particularly given social circumstances. At the moment in Europe, of course, everyone is trying to understand the radicalization of young people who are attracted to a jihadist ideology. Whereas if you look at somewhere like Central America or South America, the question is why do young people take up arms and seek some form of power within their communities, usually using something like the drugs trade as financial leverage. So it very much depends where you are, what time frame you're operating in. For example, violent jihadism, it was really not a phenomenon that we identified in Europe, say in the 1960s, 1970s or 1980s. Now it has become very mainstream very quickly. So you have to look at social circumstances, you have to look at family circumstances, at psychological circumstances, if you're going to come to some form of assessment which will lead to effective ways of combating radicalism. At the moment in Europe, we are nowhere near developing that understanding so that we can deal with this problem. For 3 years, I studied the life of one man, Antônio Francisco Bonfim Lopes, or Nem of Rocinha. Rocinha is the largest favela or slum in Rio de Janeiro. Some people say that it's the largest slum in all of Latin America. And I wanted to see what led a young man who led a pretty blameless life. Indeed, he had a good job until his mid-20s, into a very different type of existence, that is a member of a drugs cartel, and within a relatively short period of time, the head of a drugs cartel. As it happened in the case of Antonio, it was by chance because his 10-month-old daughter fell gravely ill, and the only way he could afford treatment for the baby was to borrow the money off the then head of the drugs cartel. So that's how he got into it. What's interesting to see is that how he got further up the hierarchy, how he accumulated power, how his behavior and attitude, both to the people of the slum where he was born and brought up, but also to the outside world, changed. And what I noticed is that because he had started off as a relatively moral person, that even though he engaged in some very bad activity when he was in the drugs cartel, he retained that sense of moral judgment in more or less all the actions he undertook. And as a consequence, although he was radicalized on one level, he also sought very much to bring down levels of violence in the favela, which I thought was a very important observation. The internet, of course, is playing a role in radicalization. We're watching this quite closely in Europe because ISIS and associated groups are clearly using social media networks and indeed encrypted messaging systems very effectively to get their message across, and it has been impossible hitherto to find a counter strategy. Of course, on one level, it's very understandable because the message coming from ISIS is a sort of come to Syria, take up arms, have the adventure of a lifetime, and probably be able to sleep with as many people as you want to as well. And what can you counter that with? Come to the job centre and look for a job. You probably won't get one. It's very difficult to know what to do about an organisation which has got commitment, passion, and the technical ability and the social know-how to spread messages through social media. This is something that we have got to develop a counter-narrative, a counter-strategy for, but at the moment, I don't see it happening.